Greetings, my champions of the light, and welcome to another episode of Light Be With You. Now, my friends, today is a most exciting day. For today, we will be venturing into the Dead Mines. And now, as I am level 17, all I have to do is use the Group Finder tool to find a group for the Dead Mines. Now, my friends, unlike in the modern game, the Group Finder tool is no dungeon finder. That means people can decline me. As a pacifist priest, I have no option but to offer my healing abilities, and perhaps someone will invite me. And while I search for groups to join, standing atop this hill in Westfall, I will take a moment to go over the holy commandments. We must harm no creatures. We must sacrifice ourselves for others, doing everything within reason to save lives. And we must not beg for help or carries. And so far, my friends, we have maintained our holy vows. And what do you know? It appears that as I was going down the list, messaging adventurers, finally someone has responded, and I am invited to a group with this warrior. I give this warrior good tidings, as I am only just level 17. I believe I need to make every effort to be friendly, to avoid this warrior changing their mind about inviting me. And at this point, my friends, I believe the group is forming. I excitedly make my way towards the town of Moonbrook. And what do you know, as I enter Moonbrook, before long there is a paladin invited to the group. We only need one more adventurer and we can get going. Now, my friends, it's important to remember that no matter how prepared we may be, we are seriously going to have to be careful. The second holy commandment applies more than ever before. That is right, my friends. We must sacrifice ourselves for others, doing everything within reason to save lives. Now, what does that mean, my disciples? Well, I believe it means that we must be willing to die for any member of this group. That means if someone overpulls in the Goblin Foundry, let's just say, I've got to be the last one out there. Remember, my friends, although I haven't brought this up since one of the earlier episodes, if I fail to uphold a holy commandment, I have to give away half of my gold. And what do you know, our fifth adventurer joins us. However, I do notice that this dwarf here, well, he appears to be a priest. Not only that, but he is a level 19 priest. And, my friends, it is at this point I begin to feel a tinge of nervousness. Not because we are about to enter the Dead Mines, but strangely enough because I'm now concerned that I may be replaced. I am clearly the lowest level adventurer in this group. And so, to make my presence known, I continue to chat away in the party chat, and hope that they don't kick me. However, my friends, as you are probably guessing, this dwarf here, this dwarf priest, he takes it upon himself to point out that there are now 2 healers and 2 tanks in the group. And then, my friends, I wait a considerable amount of time. At that moment, as I am about to begin this adventure, I receive a whisper from the group leader. And honestly, my friends, I can't bear to open it up. I already know what it's going to say. As you are probably expecting, the group leader says that he's going to have to kick me from the group, as they need a higher level to join. And it appears the conniving dwarf may have convinced the group leader to remove me from the group. Perhaps the dwarven priest believed I was competition for his loot. At this point, my friends, I have waited a considerable amount of time. I do tell the group leader that I hope the light can forgive him. However, then I have a genius idea. What if I just create my own group? If adventurers whisper me and ask for an invite, then I'm allowed to do that, I think. Maybe. Technically, I am not the one asking for aid, and so I would not be breaking a holy commandment. It is at this point I realize that I may have a slight problem. You see, my friends, there are plenty of healers queued up in the looking for group, and all of them are higher level than myself. And I suppose beggars can't be choosers. I'm going to have to invite whoever I can find. And it is at this point, my friends, I find a level 18 rogue. And it appears this rogue believes that he is sitting in some sort of queue system, and so I have to break it to him. He can't just wait to be queued up. It's not a dungeon finder. And then, after realizing this, he actually asks me to invite him. And what do you know? I even noticed that paladin from earlier, who had joined my first group. Well, let's just say he seems to have been replaced as well. And so I send him a whisper, and I offer this same paladin the opportunity to join our group. However, he is having none of it, and he does not believe we are good enough. And so I remind him that beggars can't be choosers, as he had also been removed from the same group that I was kicked from. I continue to advertise our group in the general chat, and all the while, the rogue that I invited earlier, well, let's just say he is quite bored, and he decides to entertain himself by attacking these Defias pillagers and the Defias looters. Now, my friends, this is not only passive experience points for me, but he's actually slowly, unwittingly, getting my quest completed. You see, I actually am on a quest to defeat 15 Defias pillagers and 15 Defias looters, and what do you know? Before long, I have all my red leather bandanas. And then what do you know? I actually find someone willing to join our group. This little gnome mage is called El Profeta, and by the end of this episode, you are sure going to remember his name. And no, my friends, that is not a good thing. I am able to invite another rogue. And now, my friends, all we need to begin our adventure is to find a tank. However, my disciples, quite a bit of time does pass, and I get more and more concerned that someone is going to leave. And so, as a desperate measure, I even ask everyone in the group to ask their guild. At a certain point, the rogue who I had invited initially, he states that he could probably tank the dungeon, and that we probably don't even need a tank. And then, suddenly, my fears are realized, and the second rogue who I had invited to the group, he leaves. And of course, he was our highest level party member. Fortunately, sometime later, I notice a level 20 paladin, and what do you know, he even accepts the group invite. However, now that I have invited a plate wearer, let's just say the rogue that is stuck around since the beginning, well, he appears to be quite impatient. He tries to convince the paladin to use consecration and then tank the dungeon. The paladin remarks that they do not have a shield, and the rogue doesn't seem to care. It appears the whole group could fall apart. And as the rogue and the paladin continue to argue away, let's just say I am beginning to lose faith that we are even going to be able to enter the Deadmines this episode. However, something very unexpected happens, something that I had not foreseen could even be possible. The paladin, probably spurned on by the rogue's antics, decides to offer me and the mage a carry through the Deadmines on a higher level character. And honestly, my friends, at this point, after being here for an hour and 20 minutes, let's just say I don't want this episode to just not exist. So, this causes the rogue to decide that they are going to leave. And my friends, to lock in this deal, I decide to make the fateful decision. I offer the paladin not just 1 gold coin, but I even offer him a 2nd gold coin to bring through this lowly gnome mage. And what do you know? The paladin agrees to the deal. And before long, not only the gnome mage, but also the higher level dwarf paladin both arrive. And as we venture into the mine, the high level dwarf paladin makes short work of the bandits, and even offers to take us down into the forgotten caverns filled with the undead miners. And with just the mage and I competing for the quest items, I quickly have all of these union cards and Thistle Nettle's badge. That is already 2 quests completed, and we have put to rest the undead monstrosities that dwell within the Deadmines. And as we approach the entrance to the Deadmines, you're probably thinking that, oh, well, this is cheating and it's going to be a boring episode. Well, there are 2 things I must point out. You see, as we are in the Deadmines, I notice that I am only getting 2 experience points for many of these kills. It turns out if you have a high-level character carrying you through the dungeons, well, let's just say you don't really get any XP. At least we are going to get all of our quests completed. And honestly, my friends, if I can hit level 18, then perhaps I will be able to get into groups for the real deal, where we can actually level from doing dungeons. And of course, the other thing I need to mention, well, remember when I mentioned El Profeta, the gnome mage, and how you would probably remember his name by the end of the episode? Well, it is at this point that I begin to notice his antics. You see, the mage believes he is being extra helpful by tagging additional mobs that the paladin has not attacked. He possibly believes that he is doing the paladin a big favor. We make it to the first boss, the Ogre Rakzor, and the Ogre is no match for the paladin's Beyblade attack. However, my friends, shortly after this, the mage decides to pull additional mobs once more, and I use almost all of my mana to keep me and the mage alive. You'd think I wouldn't have to do any healing in this run, and honestly, my friends, I'm getting a little worried that we actually might lose him. We make it to Sneed's Shredder, and of course it does go quite smoothly, and what do you know, after defeating the Goblin Sneed, the second boss of the Deadmines, hiding between the cogs and gizmos of Sneed's Shredder, let's just say I find the Spreckle Sprocket, a key quest item that we needed. As we adventure further into the mine, the gnome almost perishes again. However, El Profeta appears to believe this is extremely funny, and I don't know why. This is hardcore. If you die, your character is gone forever. And as we enter the Goblin Foundry, things begin heating up. And no, not because of the molten metal, it is because the mage El Profeta, well, he decides to pull the boss, even though our paladin is still doing battle with other goblins. And after expending almost all of my mana to maintain the gnome's health in these trying times, I am rewarded by a lavishly jeweled ring. And so, my friends, we have our first upgrade of the run. 6 intellect on a ring. That is surely going to help us out in future dungeons. And of course, as we venture further into the dungeon, we do battle with Mr. Smite. And of course, he is no match for our paladin friend. And after beating down the Chef Murloc cookie, well, I'm feeling pretty confident, but I was very, very wrong, as something terrible is about to happen. As the paladin runs ahead, well, my friends, let's just say that the gnome mage decides that there's not enough pirates in the paladin's consecration, and of course the pirates, well, it turns out they are not going through the paladin's consecration, and here, my friends, is where it all started. I cast a power word shield. Perhaps the paladin can gain aggro if I can run the pirates into him. I do not want them to kill the mage after all, as I would be breaking a holy commandment. The pirates attack me and I use my psychic scream. Just in time, I activate my desperate prayer, but my health goes down by an equal amount. I am now 1 second away from death when the paladin clutches up and uses Blessing of Protection to save me. I leap into the water, hoping that the paladin can deal with the rest of the pirates. Now, my friends, you may think that, well, I survived, right? Out of the frying pan and into the fire. It turns out a goblin shipbuilder had noticed me, and with the paladin and the mage so preoccupied up above, in my panic I call for the raid. But what do you know? The person I least expected, the gnome mage, comes to the rescue. He uses his arcane attack to draw their aggro. Unfortunately, my friends, I now believe both me and the mage are going to perish. Luckily, in the nick of time, not only do I psychic scream these goblins, but the paladin joins us in battle and saves both me and El Profeta from certain death. I don't know if any of us would have survived if those pirates decided to chase us down. The gnome mage appears very apologetic, but I remind him that the light forgives, and that they had both saved me. I believe the gnome mage had redeemed himself by jumping down. He had no idea if he would survive, but he jumped anyway. The gnome mage's antics throughout the entire dungeon, including the moment that almost ended this entire series. So many things had to go right, or I would have perished. And I don't even know if I want to do any more dungeons ever again. At this moment, I genuinely feel like I should just not bother. And so, my friends, we have come to the end of our Deadmines adventure. And what do you know? We were able to complete every single Deadmines quest. We begin by returning to Sentinel Hill. The first quest I turn in is those bandanas. That is right, my friends, those are the same bandanas that I had collected, thanks to the rogue's unwitting aid. I also turn in the quest after supposedly killing 15 pillagers and 15 looters. And of course, it is at this point that we hand over the head of Edwin Van Cleef, and we receive a great reward, the Staff of Westfall, and on top of that, a huge amount of experience points for our efforts. We then make a dash up the tower, and I hand over those red silk bandanas that we had collected from the numerous bandits within the Deadmines. We then take a griffin to Stormwind City, and we meet up with the dwarf from last episode, who had given us these quests to do battle with the undead fiends dwelling within the Deadmines. I hand over the foreman's badge and the miners' union cards. Combined, that is a lot of experience points, but we're not done yet. I make my way towards the gnome, who had asked us to collect the Spreckle Sprocket from that shredder, and in return I receive a wand. However, my friends, without any attributes on the wand itself, I can't see how we receive any benefit from this wand, as harming creatures is against our holy commandments. However, my friends, after turning in this quest, I am now level 18. The light has blessed us once more. We meet up with our old friend Barris Alexton, the architect, and we hand him an unsent letter from Van Cleef. And after vendoring all of the loot that we had acquired from the Deadmines, it turns out we actually made over 2 gold coins. As a final mission, I visit the Church of the Holy Light, and I'm finally able to learn several new spells. Now, my friends, I must remind you that the only reason we gained an entire level this episode is because of all of the dungeon quests. If we want to level through dungeons, we must absolutely go with a group of the appropriate level. I'm thinking next episode we should probably take a break from the Deadmines while I collect myself, and if we're able to get to level 19, that would be even better. So please, remember to subscribe, and comment below if you think I should risk it all by running the Deadmines with an appropriately leveled group. And of course, my friends, always remember, light be with you.